Hi everyone, so my name is Krishan. I am a alumnus of the AK Psi Omega Theta chapter at the University of Maryland, and I'm excited to chat today about hacking your next job search, something that I think is definitely a little bit more of a relevant topic as we get into COVID. A lot of people are figuring out career transitions. A lot of people are trying to job search in the new normal, and I thought this would be a very helpful idea of just some really quick tricks and tips that you can use as you're going about the process. So job searches have many challenges. Recruiters and companies that never get back to you, companies with positions that have been filled or have expired, positions that make you question whether or not you are qualified based on the way they're written. And sometimes all it takes is the first interview. There's a lot of us who are really qualified, and we have to get past these robots, we have to get past these job sites. And sometimes just sitting in the first interview will help someone see that we truly do want the job, we truly are qualified for it. But the big looming question is, how does one move past all of these different challenges that I've named? And this presentation is not going to, of course, get rid of the challenges altogether, but it is just one extra step you can take to put yourself in the best position. So one positive sign is that all of these challenges can be solved by extra communication, and the best process for the job search really comes with two key qualifiers. Finding people exactly where they're actively looking for candidates and have a high probability of getting notified. So a lot of times when people are actively looking for candidates, you'll see that on monster.com and Glassdoor and all of these different sites. But there's probably a low probability that someone will individually get notified about it. If you're one of 200 people applying for a job on LinkedIn, one of 100 people applying for a job on Glassdoor, you're going to be on a pile of just dozens and dozens of resumes. You could, by luck, get seen. If it's an urgent job, you could definitely be in the running. But the high probability of getting notified is a lot harder when it's through one of these job sites. Another problem is with the first one, actively looking for candidates. You might have a company you really love with someone who hasn't posted a job, or they're not hiring for something that you like. And of course, it becomes more of a challenge to reach out to that company and try to worm your way in. So a couple caveats before I get into the actual tips. So number one, knowing the exact title of the role you want saves everyone time. So if you reach out with, here's my resume, what do you think I should apply for? You're putting yourself into a little bit of a gray area where it really depends entirely on the amount of time someone has to cross-reference a resume with open job postings, especially if you're reaching out to a busy professional. It's going to be a lot more rare for them to be like, hey, let me drop everything and look through my 50 or so job openings to see where this person is qualified. Whereas if you go into an outreach with, hey, I just noticed you have a public relations assistant position, or you have a product manager position open. Here's my resume. I've read through the role. I've done all my research. Of course, even if you are not qualified, it makes it a lot easier for someone to be able to say yes or no. The second caveat I have in this process is that once you learn this process, it is very easy to want to apply to hundreds of jobs because because you can. And finding companies you have little interest in, especially if you need a job as soon as possible, can be understandable. It's definitely a little bit off-putting to people filling roles. One thing that I also will add that wasn't in the original iteration of this is talking to 12 people at the same company about the same job is also not that much fun because over time, a recruiter will notice that a lot of people are referring you, and they'll start reaching out to those people. And if those people don't know who you are or don't have a good reason to push you forward, then that is also a disadvantage on your end. Now, on to those tips. Jennifer Aniston from Friends. So as part of these tips, I'm going to go over different tricks that you can use around channels that you actually probably use every single day. Twitter, Facebook, Slack, and LinkedIn. A lot of them are generally a little bit different, but my recommendation is that if there is one of these that you haven't yet explored, or you're not really that active on, maybe think about it after you read through this presentation. And I promise you, all of them definitely have some element of a ROI that you can get in your job search. So tip number one is with Twitter. Twitter is something I know I use every day, definitely not for job searching, but for for a lot of connecting with people and for a lot of sharing interesting perspectives, interesting POVs that will help you get connected to people that aren't next to you or aren't within your immediate social circle. When we're looking for a job search, it is a little bit different than the way you think about looking at pop culture or the way you think about looking at sports scores. And when looking at a job search on Twitter, you want to think back to those two caveats I shared originally, and you really want to find the right group of keywords that would match a tweet that someone has tweeted about their job. Remember, I mentioned that you want to find someone who's actively looking for a role, and you want to mention someone who is going to get notified of the role. So if there's 500 million tweets a day sent through the platform, you obviously want to cut through the chase at some point. So these are some keywords that I tend to use if I'm doing a job search through Twitter. Hiring, looking for, bringing on, the name of the role, DM. Sometimes people will say DM me for a job. And the reason that I kind of make this a little bit broad is that you essentially want to think about how if you were hiring for a role, what would you post on Twitter? And really just reverse engineering it from that. So if you were hiring for a role directly on your team, hi, hiring a product manager at Livongo, hiring a growth marketer at Livongo, think of how if you were that person, you would want to present your role there. So this is kind of like a really quick example of how well it works. So if you just search product manager hiring, obviously I didn't put any qualifiers in here, but immediately I got someone who within the last week is hiring a product manager. It is a real person with a real greenhouse link, and you can reply directly to their tweet. It fits the two qualifications. They're actively looking for someone, and they have a very high probability of getting notified versus if you had sent them an email or if you had, applied on Farmstead's website and tried to get a job from there. Here's another example of one where it has the DM qualifier originally. So they're hiring a product designer at OneSignal. You'll be working with me plus a smart team of engineers. DM me if you want to find out more. This one I think is even better than the first one because they're saying literally DM me if you want to find out more. They are going to have a high probability of getting notified because they're expecting to get notified. And these are kind of the hidden gems you want to find. And a lot of people, when I say I use Twitter for the job search, they're like, oh, who do you tweet at? Like, do you just tweet at 100 people to see if they have openings? And it's the exact opposite. Like if you tweet at even like 4 to 5 people, but they are the exact right tweets for the jobs you want, for the positions you want, it makes it a lot easier for you to at least get to that first interview, right? Or get past the smokescreen of recruiting. Tip number 2, so now we're moving a little bit past Twitter to something that I know a lot of other people use every day, Facebook. So the key to the job search is something you likely use every day. Facebook groups. So a lot of groups can be distinguished by function. There are a lot of generalist communities. Hire Club is one of my favorites. Albert's List is another one, and they are really huge assets to the job search. They're essentially groups that are built for job seekers. And there's 2 things that really make them powerful. One is that you have a lot of people expounding advice. So you can go in and say, hey, I want to negotiate a salary, and you'll get a lot of people commenting on it. But then the other thing is you can have so many people every single day posting job postings. The best way to post a job and get a lot of responses is to post it in one of these groups where there are people that are looking for job searches. Looking for a job. Group moderators are definitely the make and break factor of job groups, and part of the reason I recommended the 2 that I found really helpful is that their group moderators are fantastic. And a role is basically as easy to search for in a Facebook group as it is on any other social media. So I mentioned in Twitter, it is really important to find the role that you want and be really specific about what it is you want. But once again, if you have that specificity, it makes it a little bit easier in Facebook groups too. So this is a quick example from Hire Club. I just went into Hire Club and searched for product design positions, and you find two people like within the last day who posted about a product designer position. And the first one, Chrissy Kane, messaged me if you're interested. Um, you know, you can comment on it, you can message her, and again, she's actively expecting to be notified. And I highly advise someone to join Coffee Meets Bagel in their product designer position. I think there's a lot of fun that can be done with that app. But again, similar philosophy is that you can find someone, get them actively notified in a place where they're looking for candidates. Tip number 3 is another tool that I use every day. So when I was interviewing initially for roles in product management, I can't count how many glances I got from a tool like Slack. So Slack seems very unorthodox. A lot of people, when they consider Slack, it's like internal office communication tool, which it is for the most part. But Slack also has a lot of different communities. There's Slack groups for designers, Slack groups for marketers, Slack groups for product managers. There's a chance from an industry or a community standpoint, there's probably a Slack group for something that you are interested in or passionate about. And many of these groups will have a jobs channel. And with Slack, the best part about it is that messaging and notifying a person is friction-free. If you think about how easy it is to do in the office, think about how easy it is to do it for networking. There's not like thousands and thousands of messages people are getting a day on Slack. And people get notified the same way they get notified in any other internal office tool. And part of the reason I really love Slack is that I can speak anecdotally to the fact that it has helped me find someone. I literally hired someone I was trying to backfill and refer them to our VP of product, and they reached out to me on Slack. And I have also myself gotten a lot of opportunities through Slack. So this is kind of an example of two groups. One is called Online Geniuses, which, ignore the name, but it's all about marketing, and a lot of people who are open to you reaching out. And then another one is for product managers. Again, you're starting to see a pattern, right? It's all these people who are telling you to get in touch with them, posting a job, expecting to get notified, and really breaking a lot of the initial friction that I mentioned at the very beginning of the presentation. Final tip is a platform you likely use every day, LinkedIn. I know you're thinking at this point, like, oh, these are all really cool tools, and then now you want me to use LinkedIn, like, stating the obvious. But the trick is not to search by jobs on LinkedIn. The trick is to search by content. And when you search by content, you're basically pulling from a different structural entity of LinkedIn. You're not pulling from the standard job post you would see on Glassdoor or the standard job post you'd see on Greenhouse, but you're now focused entirely on posts from human beings recruiting for their companies. So again, here's an example of hiring a product designer, and I filtered it by content up here. And you'll see that it is not someone I'm connected with, but it follows the same exact pattern that you've seen across all of the other platforms. They mention they're hiring for these different roles. They mention where they're hiring, get in touch if you're interested. I almost connect LinkedIn most closely to Twitter in the entire job search process, because it really just depends on the specificity. If you say hiring product designer San Francisco, you'll get product designer in San Francisco, hiring product designer London, hiring product manager New York. You'll get a lot of people posting. And if you reach out to this guy, you might have much better chance of getting into something like Google, versus if you went on the Google website, thinking about how big that company is, you're probably competing with thousands of people for any number of these product design, motion design roles. So even just one message in one search could be the key to you getting an interview at Google, versus you going into the pile of thousands of people who are applying for these jobs. So the summary, I think the way I would really summarize it is look for people over postings. There are thousands and thousands of places you can find job postings. There are more that are being created every day. You can go to a Monster, you can go to Indeed, you can go to a Simply Hired. But the chances of getting someone notified is so much higher when you go to people and you find people and you actually try and navigate your job search through conversations more so than just blind applications. Number two is be specific in your roles and desires. Do your research. Like I mentioned, the more specific you are, the higher the hits you can get on Twitter, the higher the hits you can get on something like LinkedIn. You can make it really easy for you to cut through the rubble of a lot of these platforms. As I mentioned, Twitter, 500 million tweets a day. But there is someone who is tweeting about looking for a job that you could be a fit for. And number three is kind of more of a state the obvious tip, but be courageous. I think networking, reaching out to people online takes a lot of guts. And it's not so much just guts to reach out to someone you don't know, but it requires just a lot of self-confidence in you saying to yourself that I am a fit for this role. I am worthy of this. And sometimes you are gonna get completely ignored. Sometimes you are going to have someone reach back out to you and say, unfortunately, you're not the fit we're looking for. And the tenacity required to go through these job search tips is the same as any other job search. Just really, really continue to believe in yourself. One quote that I really love is that your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. And I think it's even more important here when you are reaching out to people blindly is to understand your value and just keep going. And that is my presentation. Feel free to reach out to me at this email or on my Twitter if you have any questions. And I hope to see a lot of you get jobs. Thank you.